Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Shane Plays Tomb of Annihilation Notes series, where I give my notes and thoughts on running the Tomb of Annihilation 5th edition adventure, really a campaign. And along the way, I try to give tips on how I DM, give some insight into my dungeon master, game master approach, and why I make the decisions I do, and then I also try to do like rules clarifications and things like that. So it's not a actual play. It's not a blow by blow. It's sort of a summary with extra information that I hope will help GMs and players. And if you're a player in this campaign, I like to say on occasion, you probably shouldn't watch this if you're not to this part yet, or maybe shouldn't watch it at all because I may be talking about stuff that'll happen in the future. If your DM's cool with that, okay, but in general, probably not the best idea. So as usual, we will do player feedback and then rules clarifications and whatnot, and then we'll get into the meat of this video covering the sessions that happened in this part of the campaign. And this video, I think, is a really important one for the campaign because it really goes over exploring and adventuring and traveling in the jungles of Chult, the random encounters and all that, which is a big part of this campaign. So I think, and I guess they're all important in a sense, if to get a good understanding of how to run Tomb of Annihilation, but this one's really important. I mean, it's got some key stuff that runs throughout the entire adventure up until the end. So I also want to real quick, for those of you that are out there that are computer role-playing game fans, as well as role-playing game fans, I've probably mentioned this before if I haven't. A few months ago, a book came out, Dungeons and Desktops, 2nd edition, The History of Computer Role-Playing Games. And that's my friend Matt Barton of Matt Chat there. This is sort of an homage to the classic Pool of Radiance cover from that computer game that was one of the original really big Dungeons and Dragons computer games back in the 80s. Anyway, I'm a co-author on this book. I was pleased and just tickled that Matt allowed me to come along for the ride to update it to 2nd edition. If you're familiar with the first Dungeons and Desktops, this one has 200 more pages of information to cover what's happened in the past 10 years in computer role-playing games since the first edition was published. As you see there, if you have it's all color screenshots. I went and found a lot of those. Oh man, or had to load stuff on my computer to do that. And it covers the Kickstarter renaissance of games, and it's just, I mean, I love computer role-playing games and tabletop role-playing games. So this is a really cool book. You can get on Amazon. Just look for Dungeons and Desktops, The History of Computer Role-Playing Games. And if you're the type of person that, I mean, I don't think of myself as a celebrity by any means, but some people like signed copies of books. So if you want a copy of the book that's signed by Matt or myself or both, let me know and we can work something out. Anyway, appreciate you checking that out if you are so inclined. So let's get to the viewer feedback from video 4, episode 4 of the series, and maybe some rules clarifications and stuff. So got my +3 spectacles of viewer feedback and or rules clarification on, and here we go. Actually, the first thing I want to cover is I got a question on Twitter that I thought was really good, and I don't think it was specifically tied to last video, but I think it's a really good question to address for the entire campaign and really D&D in general. So let's take a look here. This is from 50 Shades of Ray, who is Sunshine Kid 93 on Twitter. It says, "Hi Shane Plays, just started watching your videos on Tomb of Annihilation. You've been really helpful." Man, I can't say it. I always love to get that feedback. That's why I do these videos. Just started episode 3, and as a fairly newish DM, your tips and advice really help. I can't decide between a party size of 4 or 5 this campaign. How large is your party, and what would you suggest? So the party that I'm running through Tomb of Annihilation is 6 players, and in the past, long-time viewers of my videos will know. In the past, I've had parties up to like 12 because I do it at a store. So, I try to be more accommodating. Now, if I was running a group at home, I think 4 or 5 would be the max, maybe 6. But if I had a friend that really wanted to play, I wouldn't cut them off. But luckily, a couple of my players are totally cool to just sit back and not, you might even think they're over there asleep, but they're paying attention. And then when it's time, for them to act, they'll act and stuff like that. So it works with 6 people. I think especially for Tomb of Annihilation, larger parties are probably going to be better because it can get quite dangerous. Like my players really haven't, they've had a couple of lethal encounters, but they haven't really run into the lethal stuff. So I would encourage a larger party size and go ahead and be thinking ahead of time about your narrative reason for backup characters, because it's very likely a character could die and you're way out in the middle of the jungle. What are you going to do? How are you going to, keep that player going? Remember, there's no resurrection magic or anything in this because of the death curse. So that, and in general, 4 or 5 is a good size for a party, for a D&D party, a classic adventuring party. I'm pretty sure that CR, like Monster CR, is based on a party of 4 characters at that level. So, for example, if you have a CR 5 monster, I think that means that a party of 4 5th level characters should be able to defeat that monster with a decent chance of nobody dying. So, but also, the difference between 4 and 5 players isn't a whole lot as far as extra effort on the DM side. So, 4 or 5, about the same. But I would go with 5 or more if you can for Tomb of Annihilation. So there you go. That's my best answer on that. Thank you, Sunshine Kid 93 on Twitter. All right, so going to the actual video comments. Let me get to find the oldest one on 4 and work our way up from there. La da 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 da. Let's see here. Okay. Cody Lloyd, longtime viewer Cody Lloyd, say, hey, Cody, how's it going, buddy? Say hi to your little brother for me. Okay, he said this is how I'd probably handle the dino races. So if you go by remember last video, I really did a fairly deep dive on not only the dino races, but how I ran them. Cody said this is how I probably would handle the dino races. Okay, so if you go by probability of the dice, it's easier to get a 2 or better on a D8 than it is to get a 2 or better on a D4. All right, let that sink in. All right, hence the odds are in favor of the dino with a higher dice size. Yeah, okay, yeah. If 2 or more dinos were bet on to win in a single race and they hit their target roll, I would say the dino with the lower dice size wins. This is what Cody's saying. This is just my opinion because I think the underdog should get the win, plus the payout will be better for the players. So what he's saying is if you have a D8 and a D6, and if you'll refer back to the previous video, there's a table that shows like, well, if you roll a 2 or better for this dinosaur, then it does whatever you thought it would do in that race for betting purposes. Well, if one of them is on a D8 and one of them is on a D6, the one that's on a D6 actually has a more difficult chance of rolling 2 or above percentage-wise. So that's what Cody's saying here is if you got 2 dinosaurs in the same race, one of them's a D8, one of them's a D6 or D4 or whatever, and then they both roll a 2 or better, the one with the smaller dice size technically beat the odds more than the other one, right? So, and I mean, I had no choice but to say, man, that's a good way to run the math. That didn't even occur to me whenever I was doing the races. So, good on you, Cody. Wannabe says, great stuff, man. Makes my boring night shift more exciting, even if it's just an hour. I think I bet you last video, I get a lot of comments. A lot of people listen to these videos at work. So cool. Can't wait to hear about going to the depths of the jungle and all the crazy stuff the party will encounter. As always, keep up the great work. Thanks so much, Wannabe. And yeah, we're about to talk about going to the jungle. The jungle! All right. Jason Mail said, looking forward to how you play your guide and Taban. Now, Taban's the gladiator that they picked up from the side quest. And the guide they got is Azaka. who is looks like a Chultan female, but is in reality a weretiger. But they don't know that. And my party doesn't find that out for a long time. And I waited for a fun moment to reveal it. He said, my party also had Taban, but he met his end after a week in the jungle, was tackled by albino dwarves and taken out. He was turning into too much of a crutch for my players. Okay. So basically, what I replied was, I don't have Taban actively participate in the encounters unless the groups want him to, or unless the group wants him to. And if so, they get less XP. And yeah, he's a beast compared to lower level characters. He's a CR5 gladiator that gets multiple attacks and this and that, and he can wreck a situation, especially, you know, for a lower level party. But as lethal as Tomb of Annihilation can get, I intentionally gave them that side quest. I didn't give them Taban. They had to earn him. Talked about that in a previous video, or Tabin, however you want to say it. But you know, I purposely gave them the chance to earn his loyalty for the adventure. And as I did with Out of the Abyss, which had a metric butt ton of NPCs you had to keep up with, in multiple ways. On one hand, you just got a bunch with you, and then later in the adventure, you're leading an expedition of NPCs. I always kind of play it like they're there and they're adding flavor to the story, but they don't actively get involved in a situation unless the players say, you know, we want him to be in this fight or whatever, and then it affects how much XP they get. So that way, if they want to use an NPC as a crutch, they can, but it does affect their reward because they've lowered the risk by including him, so the reward should lower. That's kind of how I look at it. And every now and then things are really hairy. For example, with Taban, I'll be like, do you want Taban to get in the mix? And every now and then they'll say, yeah, but usually they're like, nope, because they want, the XP. So there you go. Plus, it's fun to watch them try to figure stuff out. Now, there was one time, there's been once or twice Taban has saved their buttocks. They ran into some velociraptors. They got a surprise round on them, and those velociraptors, those little murder chickens, were wrecking them. And really the only reason they made it out of that was because they said Taban, and he jumped in and saved their bacon. So, Rob Plummer said, we're talking about video 4. Last video, he was talking about the frequency, how often the videos are coming out, because used to I would do like a video per session with Out of the Abyss, so there were more videos coming out more frequently. And now, just due to how things are in my personal schedule, I'm doing a video roughly once a month that covers multiple sessions. And so I was joking around with him or saying, I'm doing my best, and because he had asked about that, and he said, "No worries, Shane. I was just curious on the output. I wasn't trying to crack the whip. Great content as usual. I love listening to the series." And Rob, appreciate it. You've been along for the ride for a long time. And I just said, hey, you taskmaster. But honestly, it was just a good, I was actually glad that Rob brought it up, because it was a good opportunity to explain again, because I don't think I'd explained it since the first video. So it's a little bit of sweat there. It gets hot in my office. I have to turn off fans and air conditioners and stuff so that the audio quality is better for the videos. Okay. All right. Jamal Hashem said, "Thanks, Shane. These videos have been giving me a better idea how to run Port Nyanzaru. I started the campaign with my friends this weekend and have been worried how to handle all the information in just the first chapter." Yeah, the first couple of chapters in this adventure have a lot of information that you have to figure out. These videos were a lifesaver, and so glad to hear it, Jamal. And then he also asked, what was it? Let me see if I can find it. Oh, read more. Here we go. He said, "One aspect of the campaign I don't know how to organize. Regarding, is that when you put a gourd back together? I don't know. Regarding the map of Chult, what do you recommend as best way to handle information, given if they want to update the map frequently? Because a lot of the map is empty, of course, but the player handout with all the empty white hexagon gives out the idea there are many things not on the map to discover." Okay, so At first I thought what he was asking was how do you handle filling in that information when they encounter new stuff? And my answer was just let them make whatever notes they want on their own copy of the map. And then I said, is that what you're asking? Because I wasn't quite sure. And what I meant by that was, if you give the players information and they don't put it on their map, that's their bad. You don't have to be their teacher as far as saying, make sure to write that down for the test. You give them information and let them do what they want with it. And if they choose not to map or to make notes of that or whatever, that's on them. But I think really what he's asking is like, man, there's all this white space. Because you'll remember the map of Chult has, the player map anyway, the outside boundaries of Chult is filled in and a little bit towards the interior, but then there's this big, huge area in the middle that's just white space, cream, beige hexagons, right, for the hex crawl. And I think what Jamal is saying is, hey, there should be a lot of stuff there for them to discover. How do you handle that? And so in that case, I think he's asking, should I just make up a bunch of stuff for them to find? And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you can homebrew the heck out of that if you want. Me personally, I think just between random encounters and the stuff that's already, there's a lot of areas in the book or in Chult that are outlined in the book that are either part of the campaign or just flavor interesting places they can go. I think there's already enough there. But if you want to add more as the DM, go crazy. There's a lot of space there. And then, Jamal did come back and said, thanks, I guess, when you think about it. That way, the map allows a lot of design space for multiple ideas. There'll be a lot of fun just getting the places in Chult. And, of course, we'll be adding a bunch of fun encounters on the way. Right. So, and then I said, yeah, the random encounters will add a lot for them to make notes if they want. There's a lot of random encounters in this game. And we're going to be talking about in this video. So maybe let's talk about it this way. If the white space makes you feel obligated or burdened or nervous as a DM on that map to fill a bunch of stuff in for them to find, don't worry about it. There's a lot of stuff for players to do in this adventure between stuff that's already in the book as part of Chult or that, for the random encounters. So, and the random encounters can change depending on where the players are on the map. There's a lot. We'll talk about that here in a second. So, all right. I hope I got that right as far as what Jamal was asking. Feel free to follow up, Jamal, and I'll be happy to give my further opinions and thoughts and whatnot upon it. Let's see. Duarte Fernandez said, keep it going, man. I'm going to start DMing Tomb tomorrow and loving these tips and see how you doing or how I'm doing it for him to have ideas. I said, man, I'm planning on it. I'm planning on keeping going, so have no fear of that. Let's see if there's any. I think that's it. That's it for the viewer feedback. So let's look at some rules clarifications here, and then we'll get to the actual recap of the first few sessions of adventuring in the jungle. All right. So rules, clarifications, and stuff. Let's see what I wrote down. Session notes. See that shark? We'll get to that. Okay. All right. So at the end of last set, or in the last videos, they were heading out. They were ready to do their expedition. They had Azaka, their guide. They had Taban. They had picked up Undril, or they were picking up Undril Silver Tusk, the NPC Order of the Gauntlet priest that they were going to. They had orders, or a quest, not orders. They were doing a kind of a favor for another clerical order in Port Nyanzaru to escort her to Camp Vengeance. It was kind of that's a good quest to get them going into the jungle. In fact, I think even though they have it a side quest, I think using let's get Undril Silvertusk into the jungle to Camp Vengeance, I think that's just the perfect quest. It should have almost been part of the main story to get people into Chult. because it gets them on the river and heads them, pretty much off to where they need to go. They've already gotten some hints that they need to, find an oracle, or they need to go to a place with snakes and stuff like that, which will play out later. So here's some notes that I made. It said, my players couldn't make sense of the notes they had made before about hints from NPCs. And honestly, I didn't give it to them again. They asked us, I already gave you all that. I mean, they were making sloppy notes, and they were like, I don't understand this. And I don't think I was like, no, but I was like, we'll try to read again or whatever. And, they were kind of trying to puzzle it through. But, it's kind of, and every DM's different. There's some DMs that are like, yeah, sure. And they'll probably write it down for them. But if I'm trying to move the adventure or the session, and most RPG sessions don't start on time. Somebody runs late, or everybody's trying to do. You finally get going, and then somebody's. It wasn't just one. So I took this opportunity to make a point. There were 2 or 3 players like, man, they were like, where are we? I can't read my own notes, and I'm like, do I solve that for them or not? We're all adults here. There's no kids in this group. But I did give them enough information to know that they were going to Camp Vengeance with Undril Silvertusk. But they had some other notes they had written out they couldn't read. And so I didn't take a moment or 10 minutes and slow things down even further by giving a recap of all the previous sessions. So I did not do that. I'd love to hear your thoughts as a DM or a player on, what's the DM's responsibility in giving notes again once they've already been given out. Interesting discussion. So they had Tab and the Gladiator. They had Azaka Stormfang. They had the half-orc cleric, Undril Silvertusk. She's a priest of Torm. And they got equipment. They got a couple of canoes. They got insect repellent. And they got a rain catcher. And we're heading off into the jungle early morning. So another thing that I did more for just role-playing flavor, I didn't intend to have any actual game consequences unless one of the players, did something that took it that direction. Coffee. It's good, man. It's good coffee. Really good. You ever just kind of drink coffee and look in the distance like, it's good coffee. Okay, anyway. Good coffee. All right. Sorry, I'm in one of those moods. There was a lot of interest in the players after winning the dino race, cheating their butts off and winning the dino race. So I did that one for fun, but also they're like, yeah, let's go ahead and get on the road. And I may have, when they make it back to Chult, or not Chult, Port Nyanzaru, I don't know, I may have a little fun with, like, where's that dinosaur that you guys, won the race with? We're a little bit interested in all this, but, well, we'll see. All right, let's take a look. Chapter 1 in this covers Port Nyanzaru, and we've spent a few sessions in that, a few videos. Chapter 2 is where the land of Chult is covered, and the expedition begins, and the locations in Chult, so we're going to take a look at this. The meat of the rest of this video will mainly be talking about how the random encounter system works. And it's pretty beefy. I really, really like the random encounter tables, and it's an entire appendix upon itself. I mean, and it's like a mini game unto itself. You could adventure and do hex crawl for days off this without an actual narrative, and I have. So let's get to the end of chapter 1. That'll take us to... Actually, I was going to do rules clarifications, wasn't I? Yes, I was going to do rules clarifications. Okay, so I got myself distracted. Okay, so we'll come to that here in a second. Rules clarifications. First one I have written down was I have a lizard folk druid as one of my players, and they're going down the river. One of the main ways to travel in Chult is by river, and it's faster. It's twice as fast as traveling by foot. So they bought a couple of canoes. Actually, I think Undril Silvertusk, as part of contributing to the expedition because they were helping her out, if you'll remember, she showed up in Port Nyanzaru not really understanding Chult, thinking that I'll just get a horse and ride to Camp Vengeance, and then she finds out, whoa, I can't do that. So she bought either one or two of the canoes, maybe two of them. I know she bought at least one to help out. But the lizard folk player wanted to, he did ask, he said, can I just swim the entire time? And I had to kind of think about that, look at his swim rate, swim speed versus this versus that versus whatever. And I think initially I said, I don't think you might get tired all day if you did that, or if you did it all day. But now I'd probably allow it because it's, swimming, because the canoes are doing this and he's swimming. I may give him a chance for a little bit of exhaustion at the end of the day or something, but I'd probably allow it if I had a chance to go back and redo that. At first, I was like, you can probably swim for a while, but if you swim all day, they'll either leave you behind or you'll get too tired or something. I think I would allow it now, but he would probably have twice the chance of getting attacked by something in the water. So still not the best idea. But yeah, he was kind of like the idea of just swimming along by the canoes. So that was one rules clarification. But as far as if you walk all day, that happens all the time in D&D. It's just assumed you can do it. So if you have a natural swim speed, I don't see why. I mean, there may be some obscure rule or an optional rule in the DM's guide or Xanathar's or something, but I don't see why you couldn't swim all day if you have a natural swim speed. Now, if you're trying to keep up with canoes that are, we're trying to make time, so they're probably, going double normal speed. I don't know. I'd have to look at that, but there you go. Let's see I don't think I have a whole lot of other rules clarifications on this one. Fishing. So, of course, because you can camp, on the bank of the river, or you can go deeper into the jungle or whatever. But they were camping a lot at night. They were traveling on the river, and then they were pulling off, at night, finding a place to camp. And of course, in fact, I think one of my players even had a tackle kit. So he said, I want to fish. And I went, okay. And so then I started looking for the rules in 5e for fishing. And guess what? There aren't any. Not official ones anyway, that I could find. So I looked around a little bit on the old Intar webs to see what other people were doing. But let's cover that a little bit. Let's talk about fishing. And I'd love to hear people out there how you handle fishing. I'm surprised that there wasn't at least some throwaway, real quick notes on fishing, and because that's such an obvious thing that, you got so much outdoor exploration, wilderness adventures and things in D&D. I'm surprised that there weren't rules for that, but I'm trying to find, there's a tackle kit. Tools, maybe under 154. I know there's a tackle kit. And I would say if you have somebody that has a tackle kit or their background mentions fishing or something like that, then let them fish either without disadvantage or with advantage. But if they don't have a tackle kit, or they don't have any kind of background or something in fishing, and they're trying to fish, we're just going to tie a string to a stick, make a little improvised hook, maybe give them disadvantage or something. What you really need for fishing is what the difficulty number is, and then what do they catch. So you need a good fun table for what they catch after you set a difficulty number. And they will, what I did, there's flipping tables all over the internet, and that's what I did, and I had some fun with it. And in this case, we'll talk about it later. They did catch something, and I had them roll, or I rolled one or two. I said, give me percentile dice, and they rolled 100, 0. So I said, that's going to be a big something. And this is a river in the jungles of Chult, so something's crazy is going to happen, and I'll talk later in the video about what they caught. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun. I'm trying to find the kits. Where's it, man? It's been forever since I've been in the player's handbook. Let's see. La da da. Adventuring. Where's the equipment? Tools. 154. But anyway, back to the actual mechanics of it. Just establish a difficulty check, like in difficulty number, like anything else. Have them roll, and then you can say, well, you caught a carp, or if you want to have some fun with it, do some random tables on what they caught. Under tools, I don't even see fishing tackle, but I know that there is fishing tackle in the game. And there's a hunting trap. Hunting trap is under tools. This is just under, there's block and tackle. That's not the block and tackle I'm looking for. That's like pulleys and stuff. Fishing tackle. This clearly includes a wooden rod, silken line, corkwood bobbers, steel hooks, lead sinkers, velvet lures, and narrow netting. So probably what I would do if they have fishing tackle is, I'd probably let them fish just with no penalties or whatever. Maybe give them advantage, but if they don't have that, they're going to be at a disadvantage when they're fishing. So we'll go with that. And then, I found a super rare fishing table online that I use. Just search for D&D fishing results table, and you'll find all kinds of stuff. But since this was in Chult, on a river in Chult, I wanted like exotic stuff, and they rolled 100, and they rolled 14 with bait to catch. And I think, given the lush nature of how much, animals and life and all there is in the jungles, I think the DC was like a 10 to catch something. And they rolled a 14, and then I did they were using grubs. They went and dug up grubs and stuff and used that for bait. And then they rolled 100 on the percentile dice after they caught something. And we ended up with a pretty fun. It basically led to a random encounter. Is basically what happened to it. So there you go. That's how I handle fishing in D&D. I think that there's probably something on the DM's guide or something like, here's how you fish in D&D, because that's going to come up, man. Players love to do that sort of thing. So anyway, that's the player feedback or viewer feedback or rules clarification. So I'm going to take off the +3 spectacles of viewer feedback or rules clarification, and we'll get to talking about the campaign itself and how wilderness adventures and all that stuff works. All right, so now let's go back into the book. The end of chapter 1. So it talks about, the reason I'm going to take it here is it talks about the guides again at the end of chapter 1. But it also talks on pages 31 and 32, it talks about some of the equipment, special equipment that you can carry in or the buy in Port Nyanzaru before you go on your expedition. So a canoe can be purchased in Port Nyanzaru for 50 gold pieces. That's not cheap. I'm pretty sure that's why I had the cleric, Undril Silvertusk NPC, offer to buy one of them. It holds up to 6 medium creatures and has a maximum speed of 2 miles per hour. Otherwise, it's identical to a rowboat, which is in Chapter 5 of the Dungeon Master's Guide. You can get insect repellent. Look that up. Very important. Rain catcher. It rains a lot in Chult, so if you have a rain catcher with you, then you're probably going to be okay on fresh water. If you use like any water you find in Chult, you're going to need to boil it or something. You don't just drink it. It can make you sick. And then it also talks about there's a tej, which is a kind of drink, and a yikulwa. It's got the pronunciation here, simple melee weapon, but that's not really for the expedition. So make sure to look up Raincatcher, Insect Repellent, and the canoes. Make sure you have your guides squared away, and off you go. And I think I had to put that back on to read. Oh, my glasses. Okay, I'm going to take them off now. So, all right. Sorry. So, they left. They met up. They had their canoes, insect repellent, and a rain catcher. And they met up early in the morning. It was like 6 in the morning. first watch or whatever you want to call it, and off they go into the jungle to find Camp Vengeance and deliver Undril Silver Tusk. Okay, so here's some notes. One, there's a navigating mechanic in this, and I did not navigate. I didn't do the navigating. I figured they got a guide with them, all that. I didn't want to deal with that. But you can. There's a chance, even with a guide, of getting lost. And the faster you move, the more chance of getting lost. I dispensed with that because they had a guide. Now, if they travel without a guide, may get into that. For the marching order, I literally said who is in which canoe. And we drew out on the map, 2 canoes, and they put who was where in the canoes. Remember, they hold 6 each. They can hold up to 6 people each. So, neither canoe was totally filled. At this point, I want to sing Welcome to the Jungle, but I won't. 1, because I'm a horrible singer. And 2, because I'll probably end up with a copyright thing on YouTube. And if I play any music or whatever, blah, blah, blah. So just envision at this moment, Welcome to the Jungle by Guns N' Roses. There you go. Welcome to the jungle, baby. You gotta die. All right. Sorry. No, I'm not sorry. Okay, so let's look at the mechanics for this crazy thing called the Expeditions. Now, you want to go to Chapter 2. Starts on page 37. And it gives the first couple of pages gives information on how to use the map, travel distances, navigation. Again, I dispensed with navigation, but if you want to use the navigation system or mechanics, it's the start of each new travel day. The DM makes a wisdom survival check on behalf of the navigator. You do that because they don't know if they made it or not. The result of the check determines whether or not the party becomes lost over the course of the day. The DC of the check is based on the day's most common terrain. DC 10 for coasts and lakes, 15 for jungles. Apply a +5 bonus to the check if the group sets a slow pace for the day, and -5 if they're moving at fast pace. So if you're moving at a normal pace, there's no negative or minus. Notice that's one of the few cases where it's not advantage or disadvantage. They just did a penalty or a negative. If the check succeeds, the navigator knows exactly where the party is on the player's map of Chult throughout the day. If the check fails, the party becomes lost. Each hex on the map is surrounded by 6 other hexes. Whenever a lost party member moves 1 hex, then you could start keeping up like how far off are they, right? So you roll a d6 and determine which hex did they go to that when they thought they were going a different direction. So again, I didn't do that with the navigator. There's a lot of overland travel or by river travel in Chult in this campaign. So I just didn't go with that, but it could lead to some fun, especially if the players are obsessively which hex are we in, which hex are we in. And some groups will be like that. My group's sort of in the middle. They don't obsess over a little hex, but they do keep up where they are on the map. And one of my players is like, how many days has it been? And they're trying to keep a log of that because they know that the death curse, their patron who hired them only has so many days to live because of the death curse, losing a point off their hit point maximum per day. There's travel distances. Each hex measures 10 miles on this map. So characters moving at a normal pace can travel 1 hex per day on foot through coastal, jungle, mountain, swamp, or wasteland terrain. And there are a lot of hexes on this map. So it takes a while to travel around. Without canoes, it says the rate of travel up or down the river is the same. The rivers are sluggish, so the current is almost imperceptible. But you could travel 2 hexes per day if they're traveling by canoe on a river or lake. If the characters move at a fast pace, the easiest way to deal with their progress is roll a d4. On a roll of 3 or 4, they advance 1 additional hex. Characters moving at a fast pace take -5 penalty to their passive wisdom scores. If the characters set a slow pace, on a roll of 1 to 2, they advance 1 fewer hex. In other words, 1 hex by canoe or none by foot. On any other result, their caution is rewarded. They travel the same distance as a group moving at normal pace. Characters moving in a slow pace can move stealthily. As long as they're not in the open, they can try to surprise or sneak by other creatures they encounter. So instead of tracking movement-wide hexes, you can keep track of the actual distance covered. 10 miles per day at a normal pace, 15 miles per day at a fast pace, or 9 miles per day at a slow pace. But this is likely to be more bothersome for if the group switches a pace from day to day. If the group switches pace from day to day. A character with a flying speed of 30 feet can travel 4 miles per hour. So let's take that back. I think it said that if they're traveling by canoe, you travel 2 hexes per day. And a canoe, if we go back here, let me go back to this equipment again. A canoe, I think, said it was 2 miles per day. Yeah, 2 miles per hour. And that's 2 hexes a day. So if you're flying, and that's 4 miles per hour, then I guess you could go 4 hexes a day if you're flying with a speed of 30 feet flying. So there you go. I don't know why they didn't put that in hexes, but anyway, it's a nice note to have just in case, because there is an opportunity, even if you don't have groups with players that can fly normally, there is an opportunity in this adventure for them to temporarily get flying. So dehydration. Characters who explore Chult need plenty of water to stay hydrated. The water found in rivers and on the ground is unfit for drinking unless it is boiled first. If they have a rain catcher, we already talked about, they use to collect rain and then store water in portable containers. At the end of each day, any character who hasn't drunk at least 2 gallons of fresh water must succeed on a DC 15 Constitution saving throw or suffer 1 level of exhaustion. The saving throw is made with disadvantage to characters wearing medium armor, heavy armor, or heavy clothing. Characters traveling at a fast pace instead of a normal or slow pace take a -5 penalty on their saving throws against dehydration. And if you're traveling with beasts of burden or other animals, you got to keep them fed and hydrated as well. Diseases. You want to look at mad monkey fever, shivering sickness, and throat leeches. Insects can give shivering sickness. Mad monkey fever comes from a magical mist that creeps through the jungles of Chult. So that's kind of neat. And then throat leeches, if you drink any of the water, like from the river, lake, or standing water, there's tiny parasites known as throat leeches. And it can lead to problems. So, my party has lesser restoration, and I think they may even have access to greater restoration at this point. So these things aren't as big of a problem as they could be, but they can be a problem, and they also they add flavor. Right, you're traveling in the jungle. So undead territory. Undead creatures have nearly pushed human civilization off the peninsula, except for a few isolated outposts where Chultans and their allies take refuge behind walls. And the map will show you, the map of Chult shows you the area where the undead are the worst. It says characters passing through territories marked with black skull and bone icons are likely to have random encounters with undead. The likelihood of an undead encounter increases in territories marked with red skull and bones icons. Most guides know these territories well. Where undead are concerned, traveling by river is safer than traveling by land because undead are poor swimmers at best, and because it's easier to pour on speed in canoes and escape across the water than to flee through a tangled jungle. And yes, my players have run into undead. We'll talk about this more in later videos, but one of the main reasons that there's so much undead is in the past there was a Yanti, however you want to say it, Yantu, named Rosnissi, and there was a battle between mages or something, and this led to all these undead running around Chult. Now my players keep asking, are these undead new? Where's all these undead coming from? And they think it has to do with the death curse or the soulmonger. They still don't know what the soulmonger is. And I keep telling them every time they talk to natives about it or whatever, people in the know, they're like, no, undead have been around in Chult for a long time. And it seems to trace back to this battle between the mages. So let's go, when you're traveling in Chult, the key thing is, I believe it's Appendix B, random encounters. So let's go there now and take a look at that. It's so important to get this this chapter or this appendix. A lot of this campaign hinges on this appendix, and I like it a lot. I think it's done really well. Now, it does talk about Port Nyanzaru encounters in this appendix. I'm not going to go over that because we've gone over that in previous videos. But wilderness encounters. And I really like how they did this. There have been entire series of sessions where we have done nothing but travel with all the random encounters because it makes the point of what it's like to be in Chult. So what I've kind of done is anytime they're going somewhere new, across terrain they haven't covered before, I'll usually follow the rules where, hey, you're on river, so you go 2 hexes a day. You're on your foot, so you go 1 hex a day. And we will, day by day, do random encounters, checks, and the actual random encounters until they get where they're going. And then every now and then I'll hand wave something. Or if they're crisscrossing territory that they've already been over, I may just hand wave it and make a montage out of it. Say, hey, you guys, give me some flavor. What happened? Nothing super game impacting, but, so be like, I saw a purple bird that spoke in common, just something. Just they throw out weird things they found in the jungle. Or, I looked up for a moment and the clouds broke and it was really pretty, the sky, just little stuff like that. So that it's still fun role playing, but we're not doing the random encounter check. But I've done that. I mean, they've gone, and we've rolled every day and all of that to make the point of traveling in Chult. But again, if something's super time sensitive, I'll hand wave it, make a montage out of it, or if they're crossing areas they've been before. And there is, one players, he keeps asking, how long have we been traveling? Because it's kind of a balancing act. Their patron is dying a little bit every day. 1 hit point maximum. Keeps coming off the hit point. And sooner or later they're going to die after like 70-something days, if you're paying attention. And there's a lot to do in Chult. So there's all this shiny. I want to go adventure. Murder hobo. Oh, I've got to stay on target because my benefactor might die. So, and it's not just that. I mean, if a Sararak, who's the big baddie behind everything, that Lich, if his plan goes off, it's bad. So, it's kind of weird. It's like they dropped him into a theme park continent full of all kinds of crazy encounters, but then they have to keep moving. So it's a balancing act. Wilderness encounters. While the characters are exploring or camping in the wilderness, roll a d20 3 times per day of game time, checking for encounters each morning, afternoon, and evening or night. An encounter occurs on a roll of 16 or higher. After determining, and then there's a table you check here. So if you roll a 16 or higher on a 20, then there's a table you can consult. We'll look at it here in a second. If your players tire of random encounters, make such encounters less common by having them occur on a roll of 18 or higher, or only 20. You can also let the players narrate their way through avoiding easy encounters, or you can increase the difficulty of easy encounters to keep them exciting. One way to make an encounter more challenging is to have it trigger a second random encounter. For example, a fight with goblins might attract a nearby pack of ghouls or dinosaurs. You can also shorten encounters by having monsters flee when they lose the tactical advantage or most of their hit points. I've done that once or twice. Now this is important. Pay attention. Alert. Random encounters are not tailored to characters of a particular level. If the characters encounter hostile creatures beyond their ability to defeat, give them opportunities to run, hide, negotiate, or otherwise avoid certain death. You can also have other creatures arrive and provide a distraction for the characters can use to make their escape. For example, If a character needs to make a crucial ability check or saving throw, you can have a Chwinga, which is like a little neutral spirit thing. They kind of remind me of the little creatures in Princess Mononoke, the little things where go, the and their heads would sit there and make that knocking sound. They're real cute things. Have a Chwinga appear, cast guidance or resistance on the character, and then disappear on its next turn. So Chwingas are just these little jungle spirit things. I guess they're saying kind of use it as a Deus Ex Machina. Okay, so let's look. You see this table. Okay, take a look. This is split into beach. If you're within the jungle, then it's no undead, lesser undead, or greater undead. Mountains, rivers, ruins, swamp, and wasteland. And there's all these encounters. I mean, Aarakocra, Crocodile, Cyclops, Red Dragon, Giant Boars, Giant Crocodile, Sturges, Undead, White Undead, Skeletons Undead, Spectre Undead, Assassin Vines, Mad Monkey Mist that we talked about earlier, Night Hags, Giant Snapping. There's all these encounters. And the chances of having any of these encounters increase or decrease depending on your terrain type. So, and in some cases, some of these type encounters won't occur. Like it looks like that a Velociraptor won't happen in an area with lesser undead. It won't happen in a wasteland. Exactly. Sea hags only happen on the beach or in the rivers, that kind of thing. And then later after that table, there's pages and pages and pages of, you don't just say, oh, well, they ran into Velociraptors. There's pages and pages with write-ups on each encounter to give each encounter information. And then some of the encounters, they'll have a treasure drop or they'll have a cache nearby. Not all the encounters are hostile. Some of them are just, you see creatures up on a cliff watching you, or you might find a storage cache that, like a hunter's cache, or there's just all kinds of really cool encounters in here. You might run into explorers. You might run into Artist Simber, who I have not had. My guys run into Artist Simber, and I'm still debating on whether it's going to happen. He's kind of a higher powered NPC they can run into. And it's just all this stuff. Rare plants, like my players ran into this, rare plants. And they ended up getting, on a random roll, they got some roots that they can eat that give them temporary hit points. There's just all kinds of cool stuff in here. And then sometimes encounters will change a little bit, like Omu encounters. And Omu's a major area in the game, so it has some of its own encounters. But study, I can't stress enough, study Appendix B. It is a very important part of the game, of this campaign, Tomb of Annihilation, because unless you just hand wave all of the travel, a lot of the flavor of this campaign is a hex crawl. And a hex crawl is basically a wilderness dungeon crawl, in a way. And they call it a hex crawl because it's in hexes. You got 6 directions you can go. And it's a heck of a lot of fun. So study Appendix B and really learn how it works, because that's going to be the engine for a lot of your time with this campaign. So I can't stress that enough. All right, so we had I think they did, I'd have to look at my travel log. I think they did about 7 days of travel before they stopped for their first real exploration or encounter. Most groups, if they're heading towards Camp Vengeance, are going to encounter Camp Righteous, which is an abandoned Order of the Gauntlet camp that got overran by undead, and then the Order of the Gauntlet relocated. So if you follow the path that my group took, if they're going down that river, they're probably going to stop and explore Camp Righteous. So we had several days of travel before they got to Camp Righteous. I'll cover Camp Righteous in the next video. But yeah, let's see. I keep a travel log that for each session, it'll say, oh, they left Port Nyanzaru and they did 3 days of travel towards Camp Vengeance by the river Sashin Star. They went 6 hexes, and the random encounter, they had a Plesiosaurus random encounter on the 3rd day. And then on the next session, it says, hey, there were 2 days of travel towards Camp Vengeance by the river. They covered 4 hexes. They're still 3 hexes away from Camp Righteous. These are my notes that I'm making. They ran into, on day 4, some Aarakocra that were just kind of flying in the sky and looking at them, and a Tabaxi hunter that were non-hostile. And day 5, I wrote day 5 PM, their PM encounter was they ran into sea hags. And the sea hag was a fun encounter because these people were yelling, help, help. And a couple of women ran into the camp, like, hey, we're not a threat, whatever. And they were looking kind of beat up, and they were like, our expedition got attacked and we're the only survivors. Thank goodness we found you. It turned out it was really sea hags, and there were 3 sea hags. So that was a lot of fun. And then on the next session, we did 1.5 days of travel toward Camp Vengeance by the river. They covered 3 hexes. And on the 2nd day, they decided to explore Camp Righteous. So that's what happened. They made 1 full day of travel, which is 3 hexes. They went one day, which is 2 hexes. They did another half day, which is another hex. So by river, so it's 3 hexes. Remember the session before, they were 3 hexes away from Camp Righteous, and they found Camp Righteous. They're like, whoa, that's great. So, and then so that'll be next video. But so the random encounters they had in 3, 5, 6.5, let's call it 7 days of travel. I rolled 1, 2, 3, 4. I rolled 4 random encounters. Sometimes there's going to be more, sometimes less, but that kind of gives you an idea. And they also had a random encounter in the middle of all that wasn't a random encounter, but they kicked one off with the fishing. So let's take a look at that. So also one of the things that I did, I'll look at that random encounter here in a second. But while they were traveling with Undril Silvertusk, she kind of filled them in about the Order of the Gauntlet's reason for being in Chult. They're there to fight undead. The Order of the Gauntlet really hates undead, so they're there to fight them. And then they learned some of the vague details from their guide and Taban and everything about the power struggle in the past that led to a lot of the undead. Because the players just kept trying to ask, just assuming or trying to make the connection between the Soulmonger and the Death Curse and the undead. And all the native Chultans were like, no, the undead have been here for a long time. Sounds like this Death Curse is a much newer thing. Also with the Sea Hags, the random encounter, the Sea Hag encounter, mentions treasure, and they, I guess they have, the Sea Hags have a hidden cache or a treasure nearby, and it'll mention in the write-up for the random encounter if there's a chance of finding treasure or whatever. And they found silver arrows and an obsidian knife after they dispatched the Sea Hags. And they were fighting the Sea Hags. There was like a phantasmal killer in the mix, and lightning bolts, and there was all this craziness going on with the Sea Hag fight. Sea Hag fight was pretty tough, and they got Taban involved in that one. That's another encounter they may not have made it if Taban hadn't jumped in. And then I did the Sea Hags at CR4 each for X. I wrote this note down. CR4 each for XP purposes, but divided by 7 because Taban helped. Right? So that addresses one of those questions earlier. And I don't know why I wrote CR4. I don't know if they're normally a CR4. Let's see. Why did I make that note? Why did you make that note, Shane? If only there was a interconnected series of computers and databases and networks that we could consult when we had a question. D&D 5e Sea Hag. Let's take a look. Where's your CR? Well, it says their CR is 2. So why I made it a 4, I couldn't tell you. Maybe because of the sheer difficulty, or maybe I toughened them up or something. But Taban did affect their XP that they got from that. So they also ran into some explorers. I didn't write this one down in my travel log. They ran into some lost and hungry explorers, and they gave them some food. They had gotten, it was basically an expedition like them, but maybe they lost their guide, or the guide had even gotten lost, and they're like, hey, we're just trying to make it back to Port Nyanzaru. They were going up the opposite direction of the river, and my party gave them some food. So not every encounter is hostile by any means. I already talked about fishing. Now, what I did, we had a fun moment with, you've probably seen my incredible, amazing drawing of the shark that says, I will eat you. So that was my artist rendition of a random encounter they kicked off, kind of, by fishing. So I already explained how I did fishing, but what they did is I made a DC 10 to catch something. They rolled a 14. The halfling wizard wanted to fish and had, he's like, I've got fishing tackle. I've got a tackle kit. I've got a fishing rod. And I'm like, man, makes sense to me. Let's do it. So rolled a 14. And then I'm like, this is Chult. There could be some crazy stuff. So I looked up I found that rare, I think it said super rare fishing table. And I think it may be, I can't remember, I just said he rolled 100. So I was like, I'm going to make this really rare. And somehow I ended up doing, they got a giant shark. So because the river, and I'm going into more ecological detail than a fantasy game really has to have, but some people like to have logical reasons. The river that they're on, I think it's the Soshin Star, connects, it goes all the way to Port Nyanzaru, which connects to the ocean. And it's not unheard of at all for that kind of river, like even the Amazon or something, to have an ocean shark or something come down the river. It happens. It happens every now and then in America. You're like, what the heck is that doing here? Like, there's like a whale 100 miles up a river or something. So, and what I did is he's like, whoa, what is going on here? And they realize, whoa, we got a shark. And so what do PCs do? We're totally catching that shark, is what they wanted to do. So I think what I kept doing is, or what the reason I explained it was, they caught a small fish, but then the shark ate the small fish they caught, like right after they caught it. So they ended up catching a shark. And I gave, they had to do some more fishing rolls because this is such a crazy thing. And we even had at one point, like, another character holding on to the halfling to try to keep the halfling from getting dragged in to the ocean by this shark. But I think I gave, after that point, we started doing more fishing rolls. And if you got 3 failures, it's almost like a death save. If you got 3 failures, they would lose the shark. And if they got 3 successes, it would end up sticking around and literally attacking the shore. It's like I see food on the shore, and sharks will do that. Even if they don't, this is a D&D shark. So I did it that way. And I've actually got a couple of pictures I'll put up where I didn't have a shark miniature, but I had a boulette or a bullet, however you want to say it. And I put that up, and then I drew, a little a little tail fin behind it to kind of represent this is the shark. And we had a lot of fun. It was kind of half in, out of the water. It was kind of like half in the water, half out of the water. Of course, the half out of the water was the big mouth trying to eat you. And that was a lot of fun. And so they cast light at one point, and I can't remember what the motivation was for this, but I think the cleric Tabaxi cast a light spell, and they said, can I cast it on the fishing line? And I'm like, well, yeah, because it says you can cast it on an object. So it's cool. They had this fishing pole, and then they had the fishing line going to the shark, and then the fishing line was lit up. And it was at night. This is an evening encounter. They were camping for the night, and he decided to fish, the halfling. And so it looked really cool. They could, in fact, they had a situation where they were like trying to, hey, because the shark ended up backing back out and going into the water. And I think it took the fishing pole with it or something, but they could see, they're like, where's it at? And even though the river's kind of muddy or whatever, they could see there's the light. So they were trying to attack it underwater, but it finally gave up and left. So, and they, it finally gave up and left. So they did not kill the shark. And, the outcome of every encounter should not necessarily be they killed it. Because some stuff, it's just like, it's going to be really hard to kill that thing. But, I mean, they legitimately wanted to kill it because there was a giant shark, but I think they wanted the food and all of that. But the halfling wizard and there's the rogue, who's a half-drow, both got pulled into the river. During that, they were like, they got pulled in because they were trying to hold, and they ended up getting pulled into the water. And I think the light from the fishing line helped with that, with the other party members to get them and that sort of thing. But they both drank the river water. I gave them saves, constitution saves, and they failed, so they drank river water. So they got they had a chance to get throat leeches, but they both made their constitution saves and did not contract throat leeches. But I did say, because you got pulled into the water, I said, give me a save, and I think it was either a constitution or a dex or something, like not to drink the water. But they both failed that and drank the water, but then they made their constitution saves and did not contract the throat leeches. So, but the giant shark encounter was fun. That's one of those crazy, unplanned for things that can happen in D&D. It wasn't on the random encounter table, technically. It wasn't on, I'm sure there's a giant shark on there. It was just a player wanted to go fishing. And when you go fishing in D&D, you never know what you're going to catch. So that was a lot of fun, and it was one of those moments the whole group had a lot of fun with it. And then, of course, I just thought that was neat. Like, I would never think, probably, to cast light on a fishing line. But the cleric thought to do that, and it added a really nice visual storytelling element to the encounter. And the shark got away. He's like, I don't know if sharks do that, but my shark went and left. And so anyway, they kept going, and then they made it to Camp Righteous, and were next video they will go to Camp Righteous. So hope that was all fascinatingly interesting and helpful to you as far as running the outdoor encounters, the wilderness travel, the hex crawl, if you will, portion of Tomb of Annihilation. And it can be a lot of fun. It doesn't have to be a tedious slog. It can be a lot of fun, because that's part of the fun of Chult. Is it's a dangerous place. This is an exotic, beautiful, but dangerous place. And oh yeah, by the way, there's a lot of undead. Why not? Come see beautiful, undead infested Chult. See if I have any other notes or anything for you. I think that's it. Just study that Appendix B and learn how the travel stuff works, and you will have about half of this entire adventure licked. I mean, you can have a low prep night real easy, because you know that, well, they're traveling. They're not going to make it to their next destination for who knows how long. And then, so you show up, you already know how the random encounter stuff works, add a little flavor to it, let them add a little flavor to it, and have fun. One thing I did want to mention, I mentioned they had a plesiosaurus encounter, and that one was, that was a non-hostile encounter, because they were rowing down and they saw the plesiosauruses down the river, and I think they were eating like a giant squid corpse or something, and they wisely waited until the plesiosauruses were done and left, and then they kept going, because those are those big water horse dinosaur things, Loch Ness monster looking things, kind of, I think. And my party is exhibiting a disturbing amount of caution and tactics. They've learned, as they keep going, and they also have a new player, and this player actually ends up taking over Undril Silvertusk. I'll talk about that in a later adventure or a later video, but they have a very tactics, strategy oriented mind. So there's a disturbing amount of tactics being added to the group that is making my job as an evil fisted DM that much harder. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we will catch you next time on Chain Plays.